Welcome to Bella Vista Gardening. I'm Jerry Horner, and with me today is Neal Mays. He's our new Agriculture Extension Agent for Benton County. He's replaced Mark Bray, who's left us, and he's also kind of filling in for Robert C.,
That's
who
right.
was with us for years. I know I've been a master gardener for 15 years, and he was there way before me. I'm not sure how long he was there.
He came to Benton County in 1987.
87. So, and we're going to miss him because he was a dear agent, and I loved his sense of humor. We're going to miss his sense of humor, so he'll be replaced shortly. But today we're going to be talking about the damage to your roses with this new, well, it's not new, but it's
Newly diagnosed.
Rosette Disease. And we'll be telling you about upcoming events, and we'll be talking about what to do in your garden in October. So as far as the upcoming events, the Bella Vista Garden Club will be holding their fall bulb and plant sale on Saturday, October 5th at the Village Wastewater Company. And along with the Village Wastewater, the Ozark Hills Daylily Club will be selling their daylilies. And like I said last month, they are disbanding the Daylily Club. And they have to sell all their daylilies. All their daylily sales will be going to scholarships, so that's where their proceeds go. And if you, it's from 9 to 1 at the wastewater company. And if you're watching this before October 5th, you have a chance to get to the sale yet. If not, if it's after that, then you could still have a chance to buy some plants. The plants will be at wastewater after the sale. They maintain them in the sand beds, and you can buy them Monday through Friday from 9 to 3 at wastewater. So you still have a chance to get some good plants out of our gardens that are hardy, and
probably quite a variety of them.
And
too,
a good
I'm
variety.
Sure.
We have a real good variety. Iris, we have a lot of iris, and just perennials, trees, shrubs.
Right.
So a lot of iris and good prices. So, and this is also the time of year for the Master Gardener training.
That's right.
We're keying up for that. That's in January every year. We have the training. And this is the time of year they have to register or, apply. And if they call 271-1060, the extension office, they'll send them an application.
Need to do that quickly. The applications are going to be mailed out this week for the folks that have already submitted their information, their name and address and phone number.
Okay.
So need to get in touch with us pretty soon.
Okay, so there's still a little time to get in.
They're due the 21st of October.
Okay, and they're, I think we take like 30 students a year or something
That's
like
typically the cap. Sometimes, if need be, we'll go over 2 or 3 or 4 more students, but around 30 is right.
Yeah, we have 160 master
Thereabout.
gardeners
That's right.
now, so
Yeah.
that's a great group, and it's a good organization to join. You don't have to be an expert on anything. You just have to have the ability to learn how to find answers to questions.
That's right.
So that's what you need. And their classes are twice a week. It's 40 hours of training in January. So, and the reason we're here today, and the reason I asked Neal to come, was to talk about this Rosette disease
Right.
that seems like it's just rampant lately.
There has been quite an outbreak of it, it seems, this year.
Right. And a lot of research now into it.
There is. The University of Arkansas, the plant pathology department at the University of Arkansas has done a lot of research on this virus, and there are a number of others they're working on as well. But I think some groundbreaking research as far as Rosette disease is concerned has come out of the University of Arkansas in the last 2 or 3 years.
So I did have an article. There was an article in the paper in July, that I had pulled, and it was quite an article about the Rose disease. So I pulled this out, and this Dr. I can't pronounce his last name, Tanzakaris?
Frankly, I can't either. Giannis is
Giannis is who we call him.
Refer to him, yeah.
Yeah, it's the virus.
Yes.
Well, we've had that Rosette disease for years that
Right.
I can remember, that we used to call it witch's broom. And it would just be this have pictures of it, but it's this gnarly growth. And years ago, we'd just say, oh, just cut it off and then sterilize your clippers and throw it away. But now the thought is, if you don't get rid of the plant, that it can go into the root system and then it could also spread to your other roses.
It's a possibility for that, that would happen, yes.
So I think most people are just taking the plant out of their garden when they see that.
That is the recommendation that's coming from the University of Arkansas.
Okay.
Remove the entire plant.
And then do you have pictures of?
I do, yeah.
And a little background on the disease itself? Because
Let's
we're
just
getting a
go
lot of
over
calls about it.
Kind of an overview of the disease, if we could have a shot here of the screen. The Rosette disease is a viral infection, and this disease has been documented in the United States for a number of years. It was actually introduced with the multiflora rose, it's my understanding anyway, in the 1860s. Multiflora was brought in as a rootstock for ornamental roses, and multiflora rose really produces a lot of seed, and so it has become an invasive species due to the enormous amount of seed that's produced each year. And this rose also is good at harboring the virus, and so it's possible for the disease to spread from multiflora rose to the roses that we have in our gardens a number of different ways, one of which is the mite. But grafting has been shown to be a means of spreading the disease. This would occur at the nursery, and then also root contact they think can spread disease, and that is something that's been documented with other viruses. Roots that come into contact with each other where they touch can graft together, and so the disease of the disease can spread from an infected plant to an uninfected plant. That's right.
So that's how it would spread.
That's right. But eventually what happens with the roses just weaken and die.
Well, if you remove the plant, do you have to worry about the soil that's left, or would you have to
No.
worry about a root that you left in the ground, or
If
you have
the
to be
root-
sure you get all the roots out?
That's right. If a root were still alive, it would still harbor the disease, but when the root dies, the conditions would not be conducive for the virus to persist, and it would die too.
Okay.
But another thing to remember, the last point on the slide here, is that this particular disease is limited to the rose family. Now, there are other viruses that affect crops and plants, but as far as rosette is concerned, it's only limited to the rose family. Here's a shot of a couple of different rose bushes. The one in the front, if you can see, is somewhat yellowed. It is also stunted in its growth in terms of how it compares to the rose behind it, and that's pretty common with this disease. It's one that just really causes an overall general decline of the plant. Smaller and young plants are often more prone to die from this disease, from a new infection, as are larger, more vigorously growing plants. And the disease is often present in the plants before symptoms are observed. So a person may have rosette disease and not even know it for up to a year, perhaps.
Really?
Because the symptoms don't manifest themselves
I thought
right
that
away.
was
in some
within a
cases.
few months that they...
It can be as short as 3 weeks, but it may take, in some cases, up to a year, according to research, for the symptoms to manifest themselves in the plant.
And then I have the question, they said, I think I have that disease on all my roses because the new growth is all red.
All right, well, I've got some photos that I'm going to show you in a moment. We're going to talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the case,
That's
though.
right.
That's right. One thing to point out, too, about rosette, for people that don't take the plants out, they may see winter kill as being a greater problem on the canes that have the witch's broom on them, and some of the other canes as well. So it just weakens the plant. It'll eventually make it unsightly. Eventually
It'll die.
kills it.
Yeah.
That's right. I think the next slide here is a shot of the mite that is responsible for this disease. This fellow is very small. It's microscopic with a 10-power hand lens. A person can see it if they know what they're looking for.
Wow.
But it's not something that's easy to see. If you'll notice, there are 4 legs at the end of it. Almost looks like a bacteria, doesn't it, from that shot. But here it's attached to a leaf surface. And notice there aren't any wings on it. So this mite can't fly. It has to hitch a ride on a wind current or another insect, such as an aphid or a thrip. It can crawl from plant to plant, but as you can imagine, it would be a slow process.
Well, usually you'd think of mites as being little round bugs, round insects. This one's like tubular long.
That's correct.
Yeah,
It's just it's a different sort
It really
of mite.
is.
That's right.
Yeah.
These mites prefer to feed under the stipules of the plant. The stipule is the little, almost a leaf-like structure that is located where the petiole, the leaf petiole, joins the stem. And with the multiflora roses and shrub-type roses like knockouts, the stipule sits closer to the stem, and mites prefer the multiflora rose and roses, the shrub-type roses like the knockout for that very reason. And you know, it's important to point out that, I'm sure many people have noticed this, knockout roses are not immune to rose rosette.
Right.
I have some at my house that I'm going to have to eventually take out because they have the disease, and by eventually I'm thinking this winter. Yeah, that's right.
Well, see, the people are buying the knockout roses because they're so easy to grow, and people don't trim them,
right,
you know, as much. So, but now they're saying we should be trimming.
That's correct.
Roses.
That's one means of keeping the mites from transferring from plant to plant, is by keeping the foliage from touching.
Okay.
That's correct. Our next photo shows an infected leaf. If you'll notice, the leaf on the upper side, looks like on the right, is kind of yellowed and spotted. This is characteristic of viral infections. We call that mottling. And plants that have a viral infection often will have mottled leaves. These leaves are also somewhat twisted and distorted. That's a common symptom of the Rosette disease. And then Jerry mentioned earlier, you mentioned the discoloration. Oftentimes the leaves will turn purple. The thing to remember on with regard to Rosette disease is that the leaves are purple throughout the season. Purpling of the leaves or reddening of the leaves is common for new growth, but as the leaf matures, it'll turn green. In Rosette, it typically doesn't. It remains purple.
Okay.
That's right. The next shot that we have is the witch's broom that we were talking about earlier. This is one off of one of the bushes at my house that I was talking about being infected. You'll notice that a witch's broom is just a profuse upward branching of profuse stem growth, I guess I should say.
Just very gnarly, and it's a lot of thorns. Usually it's so thorny.
That's right,
and thorns.
Really unsightly for the most part. Witch's broom is not unique to rosette, though. An assortment of different plants can have a witch's broom. In some cases, plants are actually cultivated so that they do have a witch's broom.
Really?
There are certain situations where that is just in an ornamental plant, for example. In some cases it would be desirable to have a witch's broom, but by and large that's not the case. We want to control witch's broom growth just because of the appearance of the plant. Witch's brooms are formed due to overproduction of a plant hormone called cytokinin. The cytokinin is one of the hormones that regulates plant growth. And so in this case, the witch's broom is growing due to an overproduction of cytokinin, and then that stimulates secondary and tertiary buds down the stem to break and begin their growth, and thus we have the...
and the mites love that area because
they
there's
do.
So much for
That's
them
right.
to feed at.
That's right.
Yeah.
And particularly on the tender buds that have broken, sap is easy for them to get to.
Right.
So it is an unnatural growth pattern for the plants to exhibit, but not exclusive to roses and rosette. I think I have on the next shot, here's another shot, or another photo of witch's broom. This shot shows the purpling or the reddening that we were talking about. And then also, if you look closely on this photograph, there are some a number of the thorns that you mentioned earlier. The thing about those thorns is that they're not typically the type that hurt when you poke yourself with them.
And
often they're soft and pliable, they bend around, and then we see an extra amount of stem growth as well. The stems will grow longer than they normally would, and all the while growing the thorns and the purplish leaves.
Well, I guess the main thing is to control this witch's broom and try to get it out of the area, out of your garden especially. And I think Janet Carson even recommended, most people with their roses, especially the knockouts, they don't trim them unless they get out of hand.
Right.
And so now you're saying that in the spring, all of our roses should be trimmed.
That's right.
To prevent that mite from taking hold, because
Yeah.
they winter over on the top of the plant,
Right.
basically.
Right. I was speaking with Sherry Smith yesterday. She's the diagnostician with the University of Arkansas Plant Health Lab, part of the plant pathology department. And the latest research is showing that if we trim the top third of the plant, that's usually sufficient to get rid of mite populations. Then, of course, spraying with insecticides or insecticidal soaps, horticultural oils, help to control the mite growth as well.
They will be controlled with that, though.
It's difficult to
Somewhat.
get good coverage. Somewhat,
Yeah.
yes. The mites are susceptible to the insecticidal soaps more so than spider mites would be, and they are susceptible to the insecticides as well.
So it's more of a preventative step, is if you trim your rows, the top third.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So that would help.
Yeah, I have another shot too of on the screen here of something that looks a lot like rose rosette. I guess before we get there, here's another shot. If we have a shot of the screen here of the thorns, the thorniness. This is probably easier to see than the previous slide. But what I was wanting to show, let me go one more, is a possible misdiagnosis. Sometimes when people are spraying with Roundup, which has glyphosate, that's the active ingredient in glyphosate, and they hit the roses, they will have a witch's broom form due to herbicide injury.
Oh, okay.
So folks will call in from time to time and say, hey, I think I have Rosette disease, I've got this witch's broom, when in fact, when the sample is sent off for diagnosis, well, it's not rosette, it's just an herbicide injury.
So it's overspray of the Roundup.
Right, and it and 2,4-D will both cause this problem, and both are prone to drifting on windy days. The key difference, though, between this and rosette is the thorns are lacking. With herbicide injury, we won't have the
You won't have the
thorniness.
excessive thorn
That's
growth,
right.
right?
That's right.
Okay. Well,
And I guess I'll mention this as well. The way herbicides work, they attack specific parts of cells, and in so doing, they alter the normal functioning of the cell, and so physical and biological processes of cell growth and development don't occur as they should, and with Roundup, the case is it quickly kills the plant. Plant hormones behave similarly, but their function is to, and by hormones I mean synthetic growth stimulants, growth regulators. They affect those plants, but we're controlling, in this case, a desirable attribute, something that we want to happen. So gibberellins, cytokinins, auxins, all of these growth hormones that plants naturally produce anyway can be used to our advantage, just in a different format. With herbicides we're killing. In this case, we're
trying to make them grow
trying to
better.
make them grow
you know,
well, or grow as we
faster.
want them to.
Right.
That's right.
Okay.
Commonly used in greenhouses, for example, to promote flowering and that sort of
Right. Okay. Well, I think we've got a task in front of us. If anyone has this disease, and you have to control it, otherwise it's going to be going, rampant.
That's right. That's right. I have one more slide, just a wrap up that shows the kind of the scope of what we've talked about. It should be noted, and I don't think we pointed this out, or if we did, I missed it. There isn't a cure for rosette. And
Just have to get rid of it.
Maybe we did. That's right. Once we determine that we have an infection, the plant just needs to be removed. Multiflora rose, if it's close by, should be destroyed. If raising roses is somebody's objective anyway, because multiflora rose does harbor this disease, and it is an invasive plant.
Now, the multiflora rose you're talking about is the wild rose.
That's right,
It's
wild.
It's not the one you buy at the nursery. That's a multiflora type rose.
This is Rosa multiflora, I think is
this is
the scientific name.
This is the native rose, or not native, but it's the wild rose that grows wild.
Yeah,
in
the introduced rose.
yeah.
That's right. And it's also, it's actually quite susceptible to rosette. There's been some thought from some folks, well, since rosette is so damaging to multiflora, if we want to kill out multiflora, let's just inoculate it with rosette. Well, that's fine unless there's somebody around that has roses that they want to keep. And so
that's not a possibility then.
That's not a desirable arrangement, no. Woolly mites, again, can be controlled to help to prevent spread of the disease. This is the aerial fied mite that we showed the photograph of earlier. Sevin dust, which contains carbaryl, has been shown to kill these mites, as do insecticidal soaps. And pruning, of course, we just talked about getting rid of the affected parts of the plant in the first place. All are effective at controlling this, at least somewhat. The thing to remember, though, with regard to spraying is that we may, in killing the woolly mites, we may increase a problem with spider mites because the predators of spider mites are susceptible to the insecticides that are applied to kill the woolly mite.
Oh, my.
So it's kind of a fine line that we walk in terms of controlling
Everything is so
this
connected
disease.
with horticulture.
It
You know,
sure
it
is.
really is. You have to be careful what you're doing that you don't cause a bad problem afterward.
Yeah. I guess the last point that I would make, too, is that there are no resistant varieties at this point. There's a graduate student at the university that is working on this right now, trying to determine if there are some possibilities for breeding roses that are resistant to rose rosette, but so far that's just not the case.
Well, we have to follow this, you know,
That's
and
right.
see how it goes. But,
Yeah.
you know, the main thing now is to just get these things out of your garden and try not to spread it anymore.
that's
So
right.
That's good. So the other things we need to talk about is what to do in our gardens besides this, you know, monitoring your rose rosette problems. And the annuals and herbs, of course, the annuals are pretty fading out now, and the herbs are fading. I've used my last basil for my pesto. But you can put them in, put your herbs in oil or vinegar, make oil or vinegar, and dry them.
Right.
You know, and the tropicals. I'm bringing my tropicals in.
Right, it's time to do that.
It's
We're going to
time.
be having frost pretty soon. I think the forecast is for what, the low
Early,
40s?
early
next
October,
week.
we're going to have some 40s.
Yeah,
and-
our average first frost date for this part of the country is around the 10th to between the 10th and the 20th of October. So
Right.
it's time to be watching the weather forecast and
Right.
consider bringing plants in.
And then spray them. We got to spray them with that insecticidal soap that
That's
are
right.
not bringing critters in your
That's
house.
right. Yeah.
So. Now the mums are blooming. It's early October. The mums are blooming. And you can add mums to your garden now.
Sure.
You look, see where you have an empty spot or need some color.
Probably get some good prices on them right now.
Yeah, they're probably October. The prices are getting a little less. And don't forget to finish planting any of your perennials that you want to move or change or add, and then mulch them pretty well for the winter.
It's a good thing to be thinking about. Taking care of bulbs right now as well.
Right.
Maybe dividing irises if need be and moving those
Yeah, 'cause-
around the garden. It's good to plant these in odd numbers. It's just a best practice, 5 to 7 of them. And be thinking about planting lily bulbs and tulips at the end of this month.
Right, yeah, because we'll have some bulbs at the sale, and this is a good time to, at
Right.
the box stores, sometimes they are pretty reasonable,
Sure.
you know, at this time. And of course, we talked about roses. The other thing about the roses is you don't want to be trimming, trimming the roses now, like deadheading. Just let them go to the rose hips and let them go for the winter. If they're really tall, you have some hybrid teas that are pretty tall, and I'll cut them to about 3 feet so they don't rock in the wind over the winter and get loose. So that's about all I do with those.
Yeah, it's good to be thinking about lawn management this time of year as well. There are some pre-emerge herbicides that can be applied right now to control winter weeds. When Bermuda grass goes dormant, of course, a person can just hit it with Roundup,
Right.
or hit the lawn with Roundup and kill any weeds that come up, and it won't
And we've
harm the
had
Bermuda.
bumper crops of weeds this year.
been a
The
good year
weeds
for
have
them.
been horrible, so they're going to be
That's-
bad next year if we don't do a pre-emergent.
That's right. Yeah, be thinking about seeding. If we want to overseed onto lawns, getting leaves off to inhibit the growth of cool season grasses that people have in their lawns, and maintain a good height. That last mowing, go to about a height of 2 inches to help the plant to survive the winter in case we do get some cold weather.
Yeah. And then trees and shrubs. October is a good time to plant trees and shrubs. Just monitor the water over the winter. If you don't get much rain, you'll have to, monitor that water and give those new plantings some moisture.
Exactly.
If we
That's
don't-
right. People forget to water in the winter
Right.
sometimes because of the
Yeah, they
cool
turn the hoses
weather.
off and they think that's it for the year. So.
That's right. It's good to be thinking about cool season vegetables at this time too. Garlic can sure be planted right now.
I always plant my garlic in October.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there are still some lettuce greens, some early maturing varieties of different plants, garden plants that could be planted right now. And if people have cold frames, of course, they can go right up through the dead of winter if the plants have some protection.
And my green tomatoes, I can bring them in and wrap them in newspaper.
Sure.
And put some apples in the bag and have some
Have some at Christmas.
some at Christmas. Okay.
That's right.
But the main thing is to enjoy the fall weather, the crisp weather, and just be glad that we're going into a new season.
That's
Every
right.
time we turn around, there's a new season coming up, new things to do. So
One
if
of
you
the
have any,
pleasures of living in the Ozarks.
right.
Yeah.
If you have any other questions about gardening in October, you can go to the Master Gardener hotline, the website, and there's a lot of information on the website. And the hotline is opened in October.
Through the end of October.
Partially.
That's right, yes.
We're going to have some Master Gardeners there Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The number is 271-1060, and if there's a Master Gardener available, you can talk to them. It's a little limited in October, but this will be the last month we'll be doing the hotline. And they're always willing to help. The Master Gardeners are so helpful.
Good group of people.
It is.
Yeah.
And then October meeting of the Bella Vista Garden Club will be on Wednesday, October 23rd, and the program is going to be Bella Vista Fire Chief Sims. He's going to be talking about Firewise presentation, preparing your home to reduce wildfire risk. And with all the dead trees and we have in Bella Vista, this could be a terrible, terrible situation if we have a fire that starts in Bella Vista.
Yeah, the hypoxylon canker is the culprit for killing our oaks. It really gets a toehold after drought, as we've had the last
and
2
we
years.
have 2 years of terrible
That's right.
drought.
So it's really wiped out the oaks.
This is going to be an interesting program, and guests are always welcome. And if you have any more information and need more information about Garden Club, their website is bellavistagardenclub.com. There's a lot of information on that. And Neal, I just want to thank you today for coming and giving us all this information on the Rosette Disease.
Jerry, it's been my pleasure.
And hope to see you back on other programs with other subjects. And
You'll probably rope me into something.
I probably will. And I hope you've enjoyed the show, and will join us again next month. And until then, don't forget to stop and smell the roses.